Hello, I'm Annette Young and welcome to the 51%, a show about women reshaping our world. Coming up, how rape has become a weapon of war in parts of Cameroon as separatists fight government troops in the Central African nation. Also, Brexit means Brexit, said British Prime Minister Theresa May. It seems to have been delayed for now, but what will it mean for women's rights? We'll be talking to Remain campaigner and feminist Jenna Norman. And an Iranian woman who became the first from her country to compete in an official boxing match and win is now worried about heading home. But we begin in the Central African nation of Cameroon, which is facing the threat of civil war. Since 2017, separatists in the country's English-speaking territories have clashed with Cameroon's troops. They claim the Anglophone citizens, which make up some 20% of its population, face substantial discrimination by the Francophone government. More than 430,000 people have since been displaced, and human rights groups now say rape is being used as a weapon of war by both sides, as Anka Ule reports.
Chilling testimonies from girls and young women are common in Cameroon. But few victims are brave enough to speak publicly, like these girls, who would only speak on condition of anonymity.
There were 3 of them in number, and another one raped me. And I even tried to cry, but they covered my mouth. I could not. I do everything possible. There was no one to help me.
Then I carried the son and I was going. The man came and called me and pressed me on the ground that if I shout, he's going to kill me. So he raped me.
In Cameroon, sexual abuse figures have been among the highest in the world for years. But they've spiked since the conflict began in 2017. Cities in the northwest and southwest regions have become a battleground between government forces and separatists demanding an independent state for Cameroon's Anglophone minority. Escalating violence has forced schools shut, leaving girls vulnerable, with no safe place to seek refuge.
You know, we've had reported instances where the military has committed rape, and some of them have been sanctioned. We have cases where armed separatists have also committed rape. But we have cases also of normal, regular civilians, relatives, predators who have taken advantage of the situation to commit rape.
Rape is illegal in Cameroon and carries up to a life sentence in prison. But only about 5% of abusers are prosecuted and condemned. And even then, they often serve minimal jail time. NGOs are trying to encourage more women to report abuse, providing legal, medical, and psychological support to victims. But it's an uphill battle. Many of them still fear that speaking out would humiliate their families and destroy their reputations.
Now, with Brexit delayed until possibly the end of June or October, those who are campaigning against it are not giving up. But what would be the specific impact on women if Britain left the EU? Jenna Norman is a campaigner for Women for a People's Vote who says, for starters, it would mean tearing up women's rights legislation. And she joins me now from London. Jenna, thanks for your time. Take me through how women in the UK would be directly affected if Brexit happened.
Yeah, so I think, as with all political events, women will be disproportionately affected by Brexit. And this is mostly because of the economic impact that Brexit will cause and how that will disproportionately impact women because we're differently placed in the economy, particularly, I think, minority women and economic disadvantaged women. Then there's the issue of women's rights and the fact that there is concern that our rights frameworks are not as secure as we might like them to be in the deal. And then there's this question of representation, and that in this whole Brexit debate, women's voices just haven't been heard to the extent that they should have been, given that we are 51% of the population, 51% of the electorate.
But you've also talked about how women would be impacted via the NHS, for example, if indeed Brexit occurred.
Well, I think we know that if 10 years of public service cuts in the UK has taught us anything, it's that when public money is tight, it's women who pay the price. We've seen that the NHS relies predominantly, 77% of NHS staff are women. So we rely on the NHS for both services and for jobs. So if the impact of Brexit is economic downturn, as many people believe it will be, that could lead to more public service cuts, which will fall disproportionately on the shoulders of women once again.
Jenna, you've talked in the past about the impact of a no deal on women, but what would occur if Brexit happens with any sort of deal?
Well, I think fortunately we have seen that no deal is becoming increasingly unlikely, which is great. However, that doesn't exactly solve the problem of Brexit and what it will do to women and women's rights. Unfortunately, the thing with the deal is that it is accompanied by a political declaration which is not legally binding and has very little to say about gender equality and women's rights and the extent to which we'll stay in step with the European Union on these things. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that the deal, even if we do leave with the deal, there is still going to be an economic impact on the economy, which will hit women hardest. And we've had research done by the Women's Budget Group, which suggests that 1 million women's jobs will still be at risk, even if we leave with a deal. And we will still have some of the ramifications on our public services, on our jobs, and on our livelihoods.
But there's still a sizable chunk of women who voted for Brexit. So how do you convince them that such a move would be even more damaging for them?
I think you're right. There are a lot of women who voted for Brexit, and there is a lot of valid reasons why people voted to leave the European Union. There's a lot of anger, there's a lot of inequality in the UK right now. But I think what people need to understand is that Brexit is not the answer to that, and also that so much has changed since 2016, and we know so much more now than we did in 2016 about what Brexit will mean for women, what it will mean for the economy, and what it will mean for Britain. And now that we have all those facts, it's only right that the decision goes back to the people.
Do you think, given what's been occurring in the last few weeks, that Brexit is actually going to still happen?
Good question. I think it's changing every day. It's very much as chaotic as it looks, unfortunately. I think personally, no. I think that I really hope that we can do the democratic thing and send the decision back to the people, and then we can get women out voting, because we know that women are also more likely to change their minds on political issues and more likely to vote Remain. So I really hope that we can get a vote and we can get women out on the streets and we can have a truly democratic end to this process.
Jenna Norman, thank you.
Thank you.
And finally, she's become the first Iranian woman to contest and win an official boxing fight, hoping to lead the way in her home country. But today, Sadaf Khodem and her trainer are extremely worried about going home.
With that final punch, decked out in the colours of Iran's national flag, Sadaf Khodem made history, becoming the first woman from her country to compete in an official boxing match and win.
I want all of you to be strong so that you can realise your dreams too.
She even dedicated her medal to martyrs, the soldiers who died in the Iran-Iraq war. This in line with the ideologies of the Islamic Republic, an act that's somewhat customary among Iranian athletes. During her fight in southwestern France, however, Khodem reportedly violated Iranian dress rules for women by wearing a vest and shorts. Her spokesperson has since claimed that an arrest warrant has been issued for her back in Tehran. Prior to the game, the 24-year-old spoke of her desire to fight on behalf of her country.
If I weren't patriotic, I wouldn't have stayed in Iran. I would have gone to another country to compete.
There has been no comment from the Iranian judiciary. In fact, according to local media outlets, the country's boxing federation has distanced itself from the female fighter, saying her activities were independent. They added that she would not be punished if she returned. The body attributed the information to media linked to Saudi Arabia. In Iran, the federation does allow women to register to box, but there are several conditions. They have to be coached by a woman and wear the Islamic hijab while fighting. To date, no bouts between female fighters have taken place inside the country.
And that's it for this edition. In the meantime, an Israeli film called Working Woman, which is opening here in France, has been getting rave reviews worldwide. It's the tale of a mother returning to the workplace having had time off to raise her children, only to discover her boss is a sexual predator who has set his eyes on her. We're going to leave you with images of an extremely timely film coming out in the wake of the Me Too era. So until our next show, bye for now.
של הבלצק, אנחנו מחפשים מישהי ניסיון מנדל"ן שתעזור לי פה.
ואני אומר לך בוס, ברוך השם.
תכיר זאת אורנה. מנהלת אדמיניסטרטיבית זה בעצם יד ימין שלי. אפשר להעיר משהו קטן? אני חושב שיכול מאוד להתאים לך את הזום.
מרסי בוקו.
זה בטוב אורנה. הגיע הזמן לתת לך שדרוג. מהיום אנחנו עובדים אצלה. אוי.
בני, תדליק טוב.
נגע בך?